Welcome to Parenting Solutions for Teen and Preteen Education and Behavior, the show for parents who want real root cause solutions for learning, stress, and behavior at home and at school. Hosted by educators Mike Tyler and myself, Ryan Kimball, each episode gives you practical tools you can use right away to get results. Before we dive in, grab our free ebooks, the Parent's Survival Guide, and the Good Choices booklet. Use the click here link right in the show notes. Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode. Today, we're going to dive right into how to get the young adult, the teen or preteen who is maybe just not doing as well as he or she should. Maybe they've fallen a bit behind or they're kind of treading water, don't really have a purpose. We often talk about the more troubled teen or youth, but today we're going to go into, well, how do you just unstick someone who's maybe not that stuck yet before it gets to that point and give you some real solutions on things you can apply right now, today, at the end of the episode. So stay tuned throughout. So Mike, why don't you throw us in there and tell us how this works?
Sure thing. And thanks for asking me about these experiences with this type of teenager and so forth. I've worked with teens and preteens in this situation. One particular case came to mind, and this was a high school graduate, right? Who just was this, what can I say? Just the nicest kid, okay? But he wasn't motivated to go out and learn anything or do anything. Fact is he hadn't learned anything. He had a piece of paper, he had a diploma that said a high school diploma is basically a certificate of general education. But what had he been taught? Nothing really. He hadn't mastered anything. And so for him, true knowledge or the excitement of mastery over any individual piece of knowledge was non-existent. And so he had no desire to go to college. He had no desire to go to vocational school. He had no desire to go get a job, right? Which at age 18, that's a problem for the parents, right? So, and it was just through some connections, some friends of mine, they became aware of this kid that was, not really causing any problems at all, but was kind of borderline going to become a problem to the parents, and particularly the mom, who was, I think it was a single mom situation. I never did get the whole family together for a big discussion like we sometimes do. But I wound up making arrangements with this young man to simply address his reading skills. I just thought, well, let's just start with the most basic thing that we have, which is our How to Make Good Choices booklet, which is written for 8 to 12-year-olds. And that age range is based on kind of rough reading skills. A kid could read it at age 6 if they had the reading skills. But in this particular case, I have an 18-year-old that I was meeting with for about 45 minutes to an hour, 2-3 times a month, just whenever we could work out getting together. It's all we had available between the two of us. And I had him read out loud this simple booklet about how to make good choices. And I was only using it as a means of focusing in what is it that this child doesn't know. And this is a good place to start. How to make good choices. Okay, well, he had no record of violating with any great degree any of these rules, these common sense rules that are taught in the booklet. What was showing up was just his simple inability to read and study or learn anything at all. It took a tremendous amount of work to get him through the simple sentence structure and to identify certain words that were difficult for him to recognize and pronounce. And wow, we became fast friends, because I was like the first person who ever took the time to dig into the mechanics of this is what it's going to take. This is what it's going to take for this child or this person to learn on their own, to become an independent learner who is studying things that they want to learn about. So we did that for some months. I couldn't have spent more than 10 or 12 hours with them. And boom, he was off like a rocket. He got himself enrolled in some vocational classes. He was doing some construction stuff. He was telling me about, by phone, the shop that he was working in, and he's handling plywood and stuff. And it was all very exciting, And it's like, well, really, like that's all it took was a few hours of work to just break the barrier and open up the door, the gate of knowledge and excitement of learning to this kid. Yeah, that's all it took. It did not, there was no brain surgery going on here, right?
Yeah.
Just open up the world of learning to somebody.
That's so awesome. I think it's so interesting. Like you said, that's all it took, but it had never been done before where that young man had really duplicated something that fully that then inspired him to do other things in life or get interested in life. Can you talk a little bit about that phenomenon? Because that's something I've experienced and seen in others who apply these different aspects of study technology that we use with so many people. How does that occur that, instead of hammering and telling the person they've got to go get a job and don't be lazy and all this stuff, you just taught them to read something really simple and it took care of itself?
Sure. Well, we could probably just go back to things we've talked about in other episodes, like the importance of grades and test scores and all this sort of thing, and your attendance record and whatever. None of that stuff matters at all. And even the mom, as an interested parent, was trying to like, well, yeah, he's not that good of reading, but we want him to, get his grades up or whatever. Just, okay. All that is just simply some misinformation that's been given to the mom, and just probably years or decades or a whole lifetime of just wrong focus. That's all, right? There are only certain skills that matter in the long run, and reading is one of them. Okay. Reading is one of them. If you can get somebody to read, and by read, okay, let's just make sure we cover this for the 1,000th time. Reading, by definition, is straight out of the dictionary. Certain dictionaries will say it this way: looking at and understanding the words on the written page. Looking at and understanding the words. So if there's one word out of 10, or two words out of 10, or 5 words out of 10 that the person, quote unquote, reading doesn't really understand or see the relationship in and doesn't have a full grasp over, okay, it's like, well, I don't know. That's like, it's like having somebody sit down. That's like putting a knife and a fork and a spoon and a plate of food in front of a child that is 6 months old. It's just going to be a disaster, right? It's not going to work out well, right? It's ridiculous, right? So you have to be able to teach this person, whether it's a child or an adult, whomever, how to read and understand everything that they're looking at on the written page. They totally understand 100% of what they're seeing in front of them. And if you can get them to experience a 100% understanding of what they're reading, that's exciting to them. That's never happened before, right? And so it might require backing them up 6th grade levels or whatever, or going back to ABC or something. Doesn't matter. Get them to realize that they can really, really, really know something. And then they start to get interested. What else could they know about? It's just a natural. That's natural. They have to experience, though, winning at knowing something. Knowing means mastering it, understanding it, really getting it. They totally got it. And then all of a sudden, they just start looking around and they want to know about things. That's natural. They want to grow up. They want to know about things. So then you can then start to guide them into learning about things that they want to know about. And that'll be, of course, different for any child. They've seen different things in life. They've paid more attention to dogs because there's lots of dogs in their neighborhood. Well, let them study about dogs. Let's get lots of books about dogs. Let's start with hopefully something that's 3rd grade about dogs. Some dogs have spots. Some don't. Whatever it is, let's have them having fun reading books about dogs. Some other kid's going to be reading about farm machinery. Somebody else is going to be learning more interested in baseball, whatever. Who cares? Let them study whatever they want to study. Let them read lots of books on the subject and just and then go out into the world and experience that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. I like the fact that it's that self-determinism point. You allowed him to read and understand at his own level. You do that with other people, and they're going to naturally reach out and want to understand more. Now, What would you say to the parent who has maybe a teen, whether they've graduated yet or not, who, like, how could they use what you just went over to help the child or young adult find their path rather than make sure they get on the right path? Like, how does that work? How does that apply to what we're going over here?
Well, my approach has always been to, first of all, validate or recognize that the child is capable of learning. The child, the adult, I've had people with master's degrees that I have to be very, very careful to acknowledge that, okay, like you've got a lot of information up there in the old noggin, and to sort of frame it this way that you're not dumb or stupid for things that were not taught to you. Okay. There's nothing wrong with you, or it's not some chemical imbalance or stupidity going on with having not been taught how to repair, let's say, a small engine type of machine, or like a riding lawnmower. I mean, I think I was in my feet before I was presented with a non-functional riding lawnmower by a neighbor who went through them like, I don't know, like, I'm not sure what analogy would come up, but he just would get these things given to him by friends of his, and then he'd use them up and spit them out. They just didn't work anymore, and he wasn't any good at fixing these things. He could repair and restore vintage cars, vintage vehicles, right? He could do that, but a riding lawnmower, he had no time or interest in working on it. And he just didn't know what to do with it. So he asked me if I wanted this thing, and we had just at that time bought a property, a couple of acres or whatever. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. Better than that little push mower that I have, but it didn't run. It didn't work. So I called up a couple of buddies of mine. Fortunately, I know how to study. One of the ways to study is to call up some friends and ask them some questions and get some terminology down here real quick, and like, well, what's this and what's that, and start finding out the nuts and bolts of something. And, before you know it, I had invested about $100 in this thing and rolled up my sleeves and got my hands and wrists all greasy and stuff. And I dove in and I got this thing operational. Oh, okay. That was great. I was able to do that. But did I feel stupid that at age 50 or 50 something or other that I'm now finally learning how to do what many kids that I knew when I was young learned how to do? No, I just never studied it before. That's all. And that's the sort of empowerment that you need to give that child. Okay. There's nothing, they're not dumb just because they never learned what a sentence is made of, or they're not dumb because they can't take books apart that would, give them the confidence to become a lawyer, an engineer, and anything high level training. Okay. They were not taught that. They were not taught that stuff. And let's back it up and let's go, okay, good. So we're going to teach you some things that you just never were taught. And let's go back to basics on this thing. And let's make sure that they can master reading. And above all things, that comes down to what do the words mean and what's the level of sentence structure, or just simply the level of language. Like, do we need to back it up to kindergarten stuff? Do we need to back it up to third grade reading level, fifth grade reading level? Whatever's comfortable, and let's let them back up and move forward and bring it up to a point where they go, oh my God, I could learn anything. I'm a master of reading. Good. Now they're off and running.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I've actually seen that kind of stigma about, I'm done because I don't know something, or, my friends are going to make fun of me, or whatever, and an adult maybe just avoiding it instead of diving in like you did and figuring out how to, fix a lawnmower. Because now I know who I'll call when I need to do that. But so how do you navigate that with, young people? They have the stigma about, I don't want to go back and have to redo things. People think I'm dumb, I'm not a baby, or whatever comes up. Is there a way of approaching that you've found to be successful?
It's really just a matter of making it known what's important. And that child and that child's future is what's important. You are important, Johnny. And you just have to know, this is just an educational piece of information for the parents, that you have to know that child has somewhere within them, no matter what's going on, whether they're just stuck in the C's and D's of grades in school, or they're already over into the rebellious behavior and whatnot. And it doesn't matter how many, driving under the influence tickets they've gotten by the time they're age 16 and a half or whatever. Okay, that's where it goes or starts to go. It doesn't really matter what's going on. That child has somewhere within them the desire to grow up and be their own person and to run their own life and to be in charge of their own life. And not in a rebellious way, like I'm going to show you, but they want to be in control of their environment. And so you have to just foster that and emphasize the fact that they do want to learn things and get them to recognize the fact that through all the failures to learn, all the B's and C's and D's and things, it needs to be brought to light that they have learned certain things. They know how to tie their shoes. They know how to dress themselves and make themselves look presentable. Those are things that were learned. They didn't know how to do that when they were 6 months old. They know how to do that stuff, and they don't have to be corrected on that stuff too often, hopefully. You're not wearing that to school, right? There are things that they know, and recognizing and validating that and getting them to see that they have actually learned things is a starting point. And then going to, okay, there must be things that were not taught to them that's now making it difficult to learn, steps 25, 26, 27. You don't know, maybe the parents don't know what was missed, but you just might have to take it on faith at first, and you can reach out to Ryan and I in the various ways that you can for help and assistance in finding out, like, well, what are the steps between 4, 5, and 6 and 25, 26, and 27? Well, we've been doing this a lot of years, and that right there speaks to the fact that the parents have to go through that learning experience, the learning step of like recognizing there might be something to learn here. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's not a parenting defect that the kid was not taught well in school. Right. Schools used to teach kids really well back around 1905. And one of our guests, Barbie Revere, talks at length about that, right? You can go check out that episode. It once was done, and it's no longer being done. So this is not a parenting defect. It's a slow demise of education defect. And we're now dealing with it. And yes, we have the purpose of one day having every school in America and then around the world create graduates who are competent at everything they've studied, which will be different for every child. Okay. It's not going to be the same. But in the meantime, we can take any individual child and we can back them up and teach them that knowledge is possible. Mastery and understanding is possible. Having so much knowledge and certainty about an area that they have judgment and can choose and pick. And this is the athlete that's going to choose their future coach and evaluate which coach they want to have to teach them the things that they need to learn. Okay. And whether that's athletics or engineering or whatever, employers, 8 out of 10 employers are going to be more or less on your side and 20% are not. But before you get into the workforce or once you enter the workforce, you're going to have to go through that learning curve and that learning experience. And what about coworkers? All these things need to be learned, but they first have to learn that they can learn. And so let's back it up and give them a win and some mastery over something like reading, some simple math. Let's give them wins. Okay.
Very powerful and so pervasive. I love it. Yeah. It applies to everything. Literally. Right. Yeah. Okay, great. I think it's a great place to end off. And these are tools that any parent can now take and empower your child by helping them find that understanding that will help them get to the level of being interested in whatever their path is. So all the links to things we've mentioned will be in the show notes and how to reach us. So always check there if you want to get in contact or check out anything we've talked about. Thank you for being here today, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to Parenting Solutions for Teen and Preteen Education and Behavior today. If today's episode helped you or resonated with you, please share it with a parent who needs to hear it. And don't forget, you can download our free ebooks, The Parent's Survival Guide and the Good Choices booklet. Just use the click here link in the show notes. We'll see you in the next episode.